God's existence, there are many ways we could kind of prove it, but let me just start off by saying this. What do I mean by God, right? When I say I want to prove God's existence, what do I mean by God? Because there's different gods, right? Supposedly out there, right? There's different gods. So, what I mean by God, I mean a creator of the universe, the person, the thing, the being, whatever, the thing that created the universe that we live in right now. That's what I mean by God, right? So before we move on, just know when I say God, I don't mean a Christian God. I just mean a creator. For now, just for the sake of the video, when I say God, I mean a creator of the universe that we live in. So one thing I do gotta say, it is very important for us Christians to be able to prove God's existence at a certain degree without using the Bible. Like, it doesn't make sense to use the Bible to prove God's existence if you don't even know if whoever wrote that Bible is legit, is in existence. So you got to prove the legitimacy of the Bible before proving God with the Bible. So we have to learn how to prove God's existence, and at a certain extent, I'm not saying be all knowledgeable and educate yourself so much and juice yourself up with theism and a bunch of stuff and apologetics. All I'm saying is know why you believe God exists, um, and it's very important. And honestly, I understand that faith is a big part of the Christian movement. It's the main thing, actually, faith. But I don't believe faith is blind completely. I don't believe it. People say, I have faith that God exists, but they just say that because they just don't know how to prove he exists, even though there's a lot of proof that he exists, right? And I'm gonna get into that right now. But faith doesn't have to be blind. It just doesn't. So, and this is the thing. I want us to understand this, because a lot of Christians, actually just theists in general, get convinced that God doesn't exist because they never got convinced into God's existence. So a lot of people get convinced out of Christianity because they never got convinced into Christianity. And that's something that I kind of want to stop, right? I want to show people, hey, we don't just believe in God because it feels good, but we believe in God because that's the truth and that's what I've seen to make sense. So in order for those of you, I'm not a parent, I'm not going to give parental advice, but what I do got to say is, for those of you that have kids, convince them the right way. Don't just tell them that God exists and to believe it, but tell them why you believe God exists. You're not supposed to be convinced 100% that God exists. You just have to be convinced at a certain degree, in a way where it makes sense. And so it is important for us to understand why. And I do got to say this. Let's get right into the juice, right? Let's get right into the juice. We have to understand, in the universe, um, in the beginning, right, the Big Bang, whatever. I'm not gonna say whether or not I believe in the Big Bang. There could have been a Big Bang, but the question would be who banged it, who did the bang, right? Who caused the Big Bang, right? But in the beginning, time, space, and matter needed to come into existence at the same time. All three: time, space, and matter. Because if there's no time, when did matter and space come through? And if there's no space, where did you put these things? And if there's no matter, then what are we talking about? So time, space, and matter had to come into existence at the same time. Now, with that being said, if we know there was a certain period of time, right, where time, space, and matter did not exist, then we would have to ask ourselves, what was there before time, space, and matter? Not only that, what caused time, space, and matter, right? What or who, whatever. What caused time, space, and matter? Atheism is a belief that there was no creator for the universe. And honestly, time, space, and matter had to have a cause. And not only a cause, it had to have an uncaused first cause, which means whoever created time was not made out of time because he created it in the first place. Whoever created matter is not made of matter because he created matter in the first place. And whoever created space is not made out of space because he created space in the first place. Just like the person who made Apple, right? An Apple computer. Steve Jobs, he made the Apple computer, so he can't be made out of Apple computers. He made it. He was the one that invented it in the first place. So it's the same exact thing. So with that being said, if there was a time when time, space, and matter did not exist, the thing that created time, space, and matter couldn't be made out of time, space, and matter. So there had to be an uncaused first cause. And it comes down to the same thing when people say, who created God? It doesn't make sense. Your logic is that everything in existence had to have a cause. Everything in existence had to have a creator. There just had to be one point where there was an uncaused first cause, because again, God, the creator, was outside of time, so he's not affected by time, which means he is infinite. And so we need to understand that in order to create time, you need it not be made out of time. So to move on, another way to kind of look at it is the universe is very fine-tuned, and it's tuned very very precisely. And this is the thing, our DNA, just by looking at our DNA of a human, you start to realize that it is made up of trillions and trillions of pieces of code in an organized way, to the point where, like, you would ask yourself, there is no way this happened by chance. The DNA in my body, there is no way that happened by chance. And we're not just talking about DNA. Okay, so DNA itself is the complex. It's a complex thing that there is no way it could have just happened by chance. So just imagine not just DNA, but all the atoms, all the lineage of the planets, the sun, how things work, all the laws, the law of gravity, every single thing that has a certain order. You mean to tell me that came by chance? Sure, time, supposedly time was the thing that made it happen that way. But from what I know, time does not cause order. If anything, time causes chaos. Time causes destruction. Over time, things tend to get worse, right? If you leave your piece of bread outside for like a month, it's going to get very moldy. Anything that has more time in existence tends to get worse. But when it comes to the universe and its fine tuning, because of time, because of trillions of years, it got better. Not only that, it got organized, and it just tuned itself just because time. What you're basically saying is, I'm going to put, I don't know, 10,000 pieces of Legos right there, mixed. But if I give it enough time, at a certain point, it's going to build a rocket. You're like, how can you compare that? Exactly. How can you compare 10,000 pieces of Legos building into a rocket to something even more complex as our DNA? Atheists believe that we come from rocks, right? There had to be a point where there was no living creatures, and there was living creatures. So what made a non-living creature into a living creature? That's where it gets tricky, right? Like, what was it? You can say a bacteria slipped in, but where did the bacteria come from? So we need to understand that this universe is fine-tuned, and because it is fine-tuned, there had to be a tuner, a person that tuned the universe in an exact way. Some atheists come out and say, well, fine-tuned universe, do you know how many flaws there are in the universe? This is a thing. In order to know the plan of how the universe should have been tuned, you have to ask the tuner, right? How are you going to say the universe was not tuned in this exact aspect if you don't even know the intention of the person that tuned it? You never know if God wanted to make things in a certain way for his will, because that's just the way he knows it will make sense. Remember, we are humans. We have small itty-bitty minds compared to God's mind, and we might not understand why things are tuned in a certain way, but he does, and he does it because he has the overscope of everything, So the universe is so tuned to the point, like, you cannot just say, yeah, it happened by chance just because you gave it enough time. That just doesn't make sense. Now, this is the thing too. If any metric, for example, if the moon were farther or closer to the sun just by a little bit, we would cease to exist. If any metric in the universe would just shift, would just even the law of like gravity, even of how the speed of light, if any metrics change just a little bit, we will all cease to exist. So not only did we have to hope that the universe will be tuned just because time will just take longer, we would also need to hope that nothing changes. Otherwise, we're screwed. So if any metrics were to change, we would cease to exist. And again, honestly, you would just have to assume that there's a mind, an intelligent mind behind not only creating the universe, but maintaining the universe. And it is, I don't know, it would take a lot of faith and a lot of blind faith for me to say that all of this happened by chance and that we are just being lucky by the day to remain in this universe. So not only that, we are like we're beings on a floating rock in the middle of nowhere. How does that make sense? You might be like, that's science, but again, it looks like something's controlling it. It looks like something's like, I got you. Don't worry about the planet ever falling or just zooming through another direction. I got you. It looks like something or someone is in control of the positioning of our planet. Just think about it. Random people on a rock in the middle of nowhere, and there's no one controlling that. Not only that, no one put the rock in the middle of space. Like, that just doesn't make sense, right? So I'm gonna keep going. There's an objection, right? There's like a thing that people say, what if we came from another dimension, right? You go into other theories, right? Like other dimension theories, or other dimension theories. This is the thing. We could go biblical, and say that, heaven, the first, third, second heaven, there are other dimensions or whatever, but I'm trying not to use the Bible. But even if we so happen to splurge out of another dimension, that still doesn't solve the problem that there needs to be a creator to create something no matter what. Let's say we came from 20 other dimensions. Who created the other dimensions? If anything, God is in another dimension, the creator of this universe. He is technically, so by saying that we might have came from like another dimension still doesn't solve the problem that there needs to be a creator for all of this intelligent design. And not only that, for you to say that there's another dimension, it's just an assumption you can't prove. With anything you say, with any claims that you say, you have to prove it in some degree. The dimension theory, it's not really provable, not even close to being proved. There are like speculations, but there's no proof for it as well. So there's no proof for there being another dimension. Even if there was proof, it still doesn't solve the problem that there needs to be a creator to create all of this. So to just conclude, honestly, look, the being that create, and let me say it this way. To wrap it up, the being that created this universe had to have these characteristics. The being that created this universe had to be spaceless because he created space, has to be timeless because he created time, has to be immaterial because he created matter, which means he's not made out of matter because he created matter. He needs to be personal because he needs to have an intention. He needed to have a purpose. Like, why did he create us? He had a personal intention for our existence. He needs to be intelligent because he needs to have the right proper mind, IQ in human forms, in order to be able to create all this perfection. And he needed to be all powerful because he needs the power to do so. So I think when you look at all these characteristics, let me say it again, spaceless, timeless, immaterial, personal, intelligent, and all-powerful, you begin to see that we are describing the God of the Bible, the God that we Christians proclaim. So I'll just splurge in right now, but I could always go more in depth, right? And if you guys want me to go more in depth, if anything, if you guys have any objections, comment down below, or if you guys have like any questions regarding anything I said, because I know I just splurged out and I was just reading from my notes, then comment down below. Guys, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and if you want to keep seeing content like this, make sure to put the bell notifications button down below. And yeah, see you on the next one.